what I see is really breaking down is what I call the funding paradox. And while women lead approximately 85% of femtech ventures, all female teams receive only 2% of early stage venture capital.
Yeah.
And beyond the capital, we are all seeing digital barriers. So one of my interviewees for my research noted that digital health tools are often silos that don't talk to doctors, meaning the critical patient data remains trapped on a phone and never enters any official medical records. And then again, there is the normalization of suffering, and women have been socialized for many years to not voice their needs, and then that actually leads to accept the chronic pain or chronic discomfort, and that's really making it very hard for women to address their medical issues.
Hey, welcome back to Women Disrupting Tech, and thank you for tuning in to episode 155. I'm your host, Dirk-Jan Upkes, and this is the podcast that closes the funding gap in venture capital by amplifying the stories of female founders and their investors. You've probably heard it before on this podcast, but women's health is under-researched, misunderstood, and underfunded. In fact, even though women represent 85% of founders in FemTech, they only receive 2% of the investments. And my guest today argues that this is at least in part because of what she calls the relatability gap. My guest in this episode is Beata Wandachowicz-Krason. Beata is the Director of Third-Party Risk Compliance and ESG at Organon, a global healthcare company focused at women's health. She also recently completed her executive MBA at the Vrije Universiteit in Amsterdam, and for her thesis she researched the systemic barriers holding back FemTech. Today's conversation starts with $1 trillion opportunity in women's health and why investors would be flocking to similar opportunities in other markets. In addition, we cover the relatability gap between female founders and male investors, why pitching FemTech as a social cause is costing founders funding they otherwise could have won, and why the data problem in women's health is as much about taboo as it is about technology. While listening to this episode, you'll notice that we don't stay on the theoretical level. Beata also shares a number of highly practical recommendations for founders who are preparing to pitch their FemTech innovation, and she offers advice on how to move around common biases from investors. So when you're ready to listen and learn how female founders can pitch FemTech to investors, please welcome to Women Disrupting Tech, Beata Wandachowicz-Krason. Beata Wandachowicz, good afternoon. Good to have you on the podcast. Please give us your background. So how did you get into your current role and work at Organon?
Hi, Dirk-Jan. Thank you so much for having me here. It's great to be here and address your audience. My journey started at Philips more than 20 years ago, and I spent my years in high-tech medical world. But over those years, I realized that we were making massive technological leaps, but there was a glaring blind spot in the room, and that was women's health. So over the years, I decided to move to Organon because this is the company entirely dedicated to that mission. And on top of that, actually, currently as part of my executive MBA at Vrije Universiteit in Amsterdam, I've been researching how we can actually move the needle in women's health and specifically FemTech and close the gap for 50% of the population of the world.
Yeah. So, and that is what we're going to talk about. That work that you did for your master's degree. So you said you worked at Philips before. What made you realize that there was this gap between men and women when it came to healthcare?
So for me, it's been a decade-long realization. My journey actually started from a women's advancement perspective, and that was long before I was focused specifically on health tech. And over the last 10 years, I've been leading women-focused events and initiatives, and they were ranging from intimate coffee corners and dinners to massive conferences that I was also leading for 20,000 participants. And what struck me during those years was that no matter how much we talk about leadership and career growth, the most profound conversations actually always happened in closed, intimate environments. And this is when women opened up.
Mhm.
What I noticed over the last decade is the same topics as we discussed 10 years ago, they are actually the same that happen right now, and very much they deal with women's health and the way we feel with our bodies and what we bring to the office. You can't isolate it. And basically, what eventually touched me on even more was topics from women's very typical symptoms of migraines, of miscarriages, of
Mhm.
endometriosis. But then we moved on to more obvious ones like ovarian cancer or breast cancer. And some topics are completely mentioned as taboo, like transition to menopause. And we don't discuss those topics officially, but we bring all of those issues with us as we enter the workspace. Um, on the personal level, that blind spot basically became a reality when I went through my own miscarriage. And then I started to open up slowly with my story and my journey. And then the floodgates opened. And I realized how many women are going through the same. It's just we don't talk about it. It's all experienced in silence. And when I look
So
then,
why do you think that is?
I think it's a shame. There are different topics that even 2 weeks ago, I even discussed with one of the coworkers, a lady that in privacy opened up, and she told me, "Well, I was not available because I went through a miscarriage, but I don't want to talk about this with anyone else, so only you know." And I think it's very personal blockage because it's a lot of um, emotions that we bring. It's not only our biological reaction, but it's a lot of emotions. It's lost dreams that we connected with this expectation of having a baby, and now it's all gone. It can be, of course, depending on how we go through this, it can be a traumatic experience for some women. And I think when we talk about professional careers, we only try to keep that mask of being a professional, and then we don't really disclose what's happening in our lives, really. And that in itself creates that blockage that we don't discuss it openly, even among each other. And that's why it was indeed like one of my findings was yes, we need to educate more, but create those spaces for safe conversation, um, because otherwise we will keep it boxed as a taboo. And that shouldn't be the case because we can't address those issues and we can't solve them if we really keep them closed.
Yeah. So what made you decide to open up about it, about your miscarriage?
Uh, so basically, I was curious. And it was for me really open up about I can maybe there was the time when I couldn't be 100% myself and I couldn't be 100% in my best shape and form. Um, so that was for me like with trying out opening up with other ladies that were asking, yo, what happened, why you were absent, just to open up. But then I realized every second woman had the same, and I was shocked. And irrespective of age, irrespective of race, that was totally something we just shared in common. And for me, that was a moment like I think that light bulb moment, like we really need to discuss this. Because I think by opening up, we can build support structures as well for each other. Um, and in corporate is and any work environment is built by people for people, basically. So we cannot be ignorant to what is happening in the lives of our employees, especially if we are in a leadership position,
Mm-hmm.
and have this full understanding that, yes, maybe there are days when we might not necessarily be 100% great, um, because we all go through different life experiences at the same time. And it can be to physical health, but it can be to mental health as well. And it's all intertwined. And I think having this really open leadership mindset, that very much inclusive mindset, I think definitely can change. And I would wish to see more of that leadership style in the future as well.
Yeah. Was it there that you experienced the more diverse leadership style? So accepting that we just may have different days.
I think it started slowly. It wasn't necessarily there when I started the diversity and inclusion initiatives in my previous company. It started slowly to open up and to build this space, but definitely it wasn't there. It wasn't there structurally, and I think depended a lot on individual leaders and their individual openness and approach. So it wasn't really like a structural initiative. Now I see more and more companies are changing. They have special dedicated days to the mental health, for example, to discuss this. But yeah, mental health is equally like our physiological health. It's equally important, and it can affect the way we, of course, perform at work, the way we respond, the way we behave. And men equally go through those struggles as women. So definitely a very important domain.
Yeah. So I want to leave this for now. We
Mhm.
turn towards the end uh, to this. I want to shift to the publication you recently published on FemTech and unlocking barriers in FemTech. That's part of the master's study that you did. Um,
Mhm.
I was wondering, how did you get started on that, and what question were you trying to answer?
Dirk Jan, that was $1 million question, and actually $1 trillion question to be precise, because that's the opportunity which lies in femtech. And
Mm-hmm,
I got very interested when I saw the report that indeed femtech has this extreme potential.
mm-hmm,
And then I started to wonder, are we sure that we can unlock it and then we can realize this? And what are the roadblocks on the way that
mm-hmm.
can prevent this from happening? But then what solutions we can as well approach and implement to make sure that we can indeed unlock this potential. So that was for me like the key passion that I put into this, and my own curiosity. And that's why I started to dive in details.
So what I understand from the publication so far is that you describe femtech as a system across capital, education, and legislation. Um, what is breaking down at the moment? What part of that those three uh, roadblocks or building blocks, I should say, is not working, or maybe all three are not working?
I think all three are important. So the capital, education, and legislation, and they are all interconnected. And I think we can come back to this in a moment. But what I see is really breaking down is what I call the funding paradox. And while women lead approximately 85% of femtech ventures, all female teams receive only 2% of early stage venture capital. And beyond the capital, we are all seeing digital barriers. So one of my interviewees for my research noted that digital health tools are often silos that don't talk to doctors, and meaning the critical patient data remains trapped on a phone and never enters any official medical records.
Mm-hmm.
And then again, there is the normalization of suffering, and women have been socialized for many years to not voice their needs. Um, yeah, and then that actually leads to accept the chronic pain or chronic discomfort, and that's really making it very hard for women to address their medical issues.
Yeah. Uh, what I'm hearing you say is that it's cultural. So women are raised particularly to just quote unquote suck it up.
Hmm.
It's part of life.
Yes.
Things you just have to go through. But what part you talked about funding gap, and that's basis for
Hmm.
this podcast, as you know. But what can we solve in education and culturally, and maybe also in legislation to bridge that?
So there are a couple of elements. I think something that really stops femtech from scaling up is something that we call the relatability gap among decision makers, especially in femtech. And if you can imagine, more than 90% of the people who really decide where the money goes would be men.
Hmm.
And sometimes they might struggle to understand problems that they will not experience themselves, like periods, like menopause. That's something that they don't go through themselves. And one entrepreneur that I actually interviewed as well, she told me that she had investors telling her that, oh, I need to ask my wife if this is a good investment in this startup. So yeah, it's like, yeah, I need to consult my wife because I cannot even relate myself to this.
No,
And
there is indeed a lot of
mhm,
there. That's a big difference between men and women. We
yes,
men, we have no lived experience what it is like um, to undergo menstruation cramps, to have PCOS or endometriosis, what that does to a person also mentally. What menopause is like, we don't know, but even women don't know. Huh? Like
that's so true. Yes.
there's a lot,
It's
especially. What I hear from women who are not in part of the scene, let's say, if I tell them like, hey, maybe you need to look at this problem a little bit different. Like
mhm,
maybe your heart problem is not necessarily an issue with your heart, but a hormone problem in disguise. So maybe you need
exactly.
to talk to other doctors too. And then they're like, wait, what?
I think you are spot on because we don't really talk about this. And there's on one side we can say, well, there is a lot of information available, but are we really educated? And indeed,
Yeah.
in many cases, I think throughout all of the lifespan of a woman, like we are taught to live with pain,
Hmm.
and sometimes just don't even address it and treat it like something special or something like it's not normal. Everybody should be really fit every day and feel great. But we just we just live with this sometimes every day and every day. Um, but then, if it indeed happens, then we can't address those women's specific health problems as a
Hmm.
lifestyle concern, like more generic, but it is treated as a niche. And that's a bit of paradox. Like, how can you have a niche solution for 50% of population of the world?
Yeah. It's a bit
Yeah,
weird.
it exactly. So I think that yes, but that education is very much issue actually across so many aspects. But then we can indeed talk to about solutions to the problem. But it's the education of
Hmm.
patients that we should know that we can actually expect more from doctors, and
Hmm.
that we need to be able to identify that something is wrong with our bodies, and we should be able to bring it to healthcare professionals. It's
Hmm.
education of doctors to open up indeed and not cluster our issues in specific obvious healthcare like issue category, but indeed open up and listen to the patient. It's also education of founders, how to ask for money, how to actually talk to investors, how to get funding for the idea, to
Hmm.
understand also, well, there is gender bias. How can we prepare for this? So it's really education across all the entire ecosystem. Um, and I think like this is the only way to address this is when we look at this holistically and not fix only one problem, but leave out the other one unattended.
Yeah. So going back to the funding, because one of the things that really is strange to me, like the part that men don't understand the lived experience of a woman is
Mhm,
something that is you can it's there. It's a fact of life. You can solve it through education, but that's a long term problem.
mhm,
But what I do not understand is like there's a 1 trillion a year business opportunity, which if I talk to any investor about the TAM and relate it to a problem that he is experiencing right now, he will be jumping to send me a term sheet or write me
mhm.
even a check on the spot.
Exactly.
So why is that not happening in femtech?
I think indeed it's the relatability issue that we discussed already, that you can't really relate to the problems. Interestingly, though, actually, the male representation in this field uh, seems to be working very well, and it can also be very helpful.
Hmm.
So there are examples which I'm happy to talk about that they were also surprising to me on how we can relate to and build that represent like address this representation bias structurally.
Hmm.
Um, so one of the examples is I participated one of the FemTech hackathons to
Hmm.
have a real life experience of how it is to come up with great and brilliant business ideas and solutions in femtech. Especially, I focus on health category. And the interesting thing was that there were four teams in the finals in this category, and a jury of five experts nominated the winning team, and that was the only team that actually had a male representative in the final pitch. And
Hmm.
all the other ones had only women. Isn't that interesting? Um, I actually adjusted to the judges because I was like really trying to be the devil's advocate and trying to understand like what actually happened here. Were they even aware that this is going on? And one of the judges reflected that, oh, they were not aware that the gender bias was playing a role,
Hmm.
and they were simply there to evaluate the best proposition. And of course, you can argue that yes, it was great. Yes, it was the product that was like further developed to get to the market. Yes, but on the other side, it actually made me realize, well, if we are in this environment where it is women positive, and anybody that joins has this idea that yes, this is femtech, right? We work on women oriented solutions, and you would expect everybody is aware also of those biases. But then it made me realize, well, somehow that archetype, that if it's a male led enterprise actually or solution, it will lead to a success. Yeah, then maybe we should just embrace this. And similarly, as in other women led organizations, sometimes they actually take a male colleague with them for the pitching to
Yeah.
investors because then actually they can break that gender bias. And well, if that works, and I have a very pragmatic mindset, what are we trying to achieve? This is the main question. If my question is, I need to make sure that I get funded, and then I will find all the best ways to make it a success. And if I need to invite my male colleague, let's do it. Because I think if we need to wait until any other solutions will actually come into picture to help us, it can take years. But if this is a quick win, yes, maybe let's just embrace this. And instead of pushing back and fighting with this, yeah, I think then we can be really part of the solution as well, and invite our colleagues. If this is the way forward, then why not? I think it's indeed that understanding of those roadblocks and being as an entrepreneur smarter, right, and effective, because that's what we want in the end. We want to get funding for our solutions, and especially if we cannot go through the reimbursement path and funding through like official governmental funds. Yeah, then we need to look for venture capital or private investment. So yeah, it's really a way to navigate in this environment.
Yeah, just curious, um, because what I'm hearing you say is the jury actually looked at progress
Hmm.
as a metric, let's say, to reward. Is that maybe part of the problem, that the evaluation, let's say, guidelines are usually, if they look at what is the best system, it's going to be the system or the solution that is most advanced. So are we looking at the right things if we only take into account progress and let's say time to market,
Hmm.
rather than low complexity or innovative solution which is going to save a lot of money over time? Which most, because if women, and don't get me wrong, I think that it's really important for men to be part of that discussion, if only for educational purposes. But I do think that part of the problem that we face is that we look at problems from a male lens. So progress is good, always.
Hmm. Yes.
I don't know.
I
Uh,
think
uh,
that's a great question that you just raised. Like, are we looking at the right things? Um, I think femtech is such a domain where getting funding is a big problem. And of course, the best would be you have your private investment and you just scale up yourself. Well, that hardly ever happens. So, indeed, if we look globally, there will be one part that, yes, we might actually want to have those solutions included in the reimbursement to be able to scale it up as well. Because then patient doesn't have to pay for certain solutions, and we can get that reimbursement through the healthcare, official healthcare, and that would be the governmental funding. But if actually to get there, that's a huge roadblock to even get in that list, on that list. Depending on the countries, waiting time to get a new solution or new um, health related right issue reimbursed, it can take 3 to 5 years. Also, that needs to be substantiated with at least 5 years of clinical data. So,
mhm,
how can we expect to have 5 years of clinical data when actually we have a solution that exists for 1 year or maybe 2 years?
mhm,
And we have this discrepancy over here. So, basically, it pushes femtech to step away from that and get other type of funding. So this is where we enter indeed venture capitals, where we have private investors standing behind, but also the underlying factor is we change the business model. It's not only for funding, but also who will ultimately pay back. And of course, in VC world, we need to have quick return on investment. Then it's completely different questions. It's like you don't look at long term, 5, 10 years of potential return, but investors want to have money quickly back. So the business model also dictates how we want to enter the market. And if we go towards business to consumer, and then we expect patients to, yeah, our clients to pay for using certain solutions themselves, yeah, then we need to have access to them as well. So it's like a domino effect of different roadblocks that we face, like how to even get there. Because if you actually are in that space, and then we want to make sure that, oh, we need to now bring awareness, more awareness in that field to our female clients. Yeah, the best way right now is to use, of course, social media, the big meta world as well. And this is where we hit another challenge, which is the digital censorship.
mhm.
Some
Yeah.
of the women related, body related phrases are forbidden and they are censored in social media, in web browsers. So you can actually sometimes promote your product in such a way to build that scale and build interest. because some of the words that are like related to female body parts are, yeah, treated as sexual objects, and they will be forbidden to share. So it's like really, it's your.
Is that because we're looking at what I was having a discussion yesterday
Mhm.
about totally not related to this, but work of art? And is this because we look at women more like from the male perspective, more like sexual beings from a sexuality perspective? And as a result, we see any mention of the word clitoris or vagina or whatever,
Mm.
which is can be completely normal in a clinical context, we see that as sexual by default. Is that
Well, yes,
one of the
I
things
think.
that plays a role?
Well, I can turn around the question because I think you would give it better insights from male perspective. But my observations in my research actually shows that yes, I think women are objectified, and that's not necessarily in femtech, in different kind of digital solutions, if
Mhm.
and also online. So yes, that's definitely a big problem. It's also about who sits behind creating algorithm be in those platforms. Is it a woman that actually works on what's filtered out and what's tagged in an appropriate way or not appropriate? Or is it actually a group of male engineers, right, that can actually sit behind this and they can define that? So this is where we need to break through all of those walls, to yeah, make sure that contextually certain phrases that are used, like vagina, right? It's something that in menopause, like we need to use like all different um, situations. Like yeah, we have pelvic pain, yeah, but if you use pelvis, somehow it's a forbidden word. I think it also depends on legislation in different countries. I think we are lucky, and I really mean that we are lucky to be here in the Netherlands, because I think we can openly discuss different aspects, and I think women's health topic is really getting a momentum. Where
Mhm.
if you look across the ocean, and there is all different kind of administration that comes up with a list of forbidden words. And anything related to gender or a woman, yeah, it's a forbidden word. So we will not get specific funding for the research or solutions that can address women related problems. Um, so this is like a vicious circle sometimes, and we are all
Yeah.
trying to navigate in that ecosystem. It's hard to generalize. I think femtech is full of paradoxes. This is definitely what I discovered in my applied research.
Mhm.
It is full of paradoxes, and it cannot be generalized because something which works well in one country will not be the same in another one. There's a lot of cultural issues as well, and in some cultures, indeed, opening up about women-related health topics, it's really a taboo, and you don't do it at all. So we are trying to be more progressive in other aspects. What is very interesting for me is actually that entire history, and now what I was also looking for in my research is that when did we actually openly start to discuss women-related topics? And what I discovered was actually Dr. Peter van Cape. It was a Dutch
Mhm.
doctor.
Mhm.
Interestingly, he was a doctor working with Organon in the 70s. And he was the one that organized the first international congress on the menopause. And guess which year was that? It was 1976. And he was actually fighting to bring the scientific consensus to a field that was treated at that time, right, as a mystery. And I think if he was here today, I think he would be baffled to see that 50 years later, and we are using the most advanced AI technology in human history, and to systematically censor what he was actually fighting for, and to make sure that the very same health terms he fought to legitimize, it's forbidden today.
Interesting how much progress we can make as a society and still
Mhm.
not make any progress at all in
Exactly.
50 years, which has been as long as I've been a bit longer around than even that. But yeah, thanks for sharing that moment. Um, on heroes, because
Mhm.
I spoke to Carmen van Vilsteren recently, and one of the things she told me is that we have a health system, and that applies to the Netherlands, but it applies elsewhere too, where the system doesn't reward what we think matters. So we don't reimburse prevention. I was actually talking
Mhm.
to about this morning to my girlfriend, and we that sort of baffles me.
Mhm.
Um, so if you look at the system, what is it optimizing for in reality? So it's not optimizing for prevention, but what is it doing or trying to achieve?
Yes, I think that's actually a great question. And currently, the system optimizes for saving lives and over the quality of life. And prevention and quality of life, yeah, it's not perceived in the same way, which is indeed very interesting because the more we can actually prevent and the more we can do to minimize getting sick, yeah, in all different areas, yeah, then of course the better for the healthcare system in the end. Um, and indeed, I think we reward like acute interventions, but we ignore yeah, like the disabling conditions, like for example endometriosis, and it still takes 10 years, sometimes more, to get diagnosed properly.
Hmm.
And I think this is indeed the institutional gap that we unfortunately hit in healthcare. I think healthcare is really exposed to um, progressing diseases that we see that actually gain more and more scale, like diabetes, like we have heart issues, heart problems, cancer, right, which is also increasing overall.
Hmm.
And I think this is where the healthcare funding goes through, like if you really look at the scale. But what we can do to even minimize the number of patients that would go through those problems or would experience them,
Hmm.
and then yeah, then refocus on promoting the prevention and improving your quality of life. But then it means that we actually push it away from like the central interests to individual. And I think
Why is that not
Netherlands
in
is,
the central interest, though? I mean, if we lower healthcare costs, I think it would be in the general interest, especially if if you do that for 50% of the population.
I think that's there is really like the entire industries right, that are behind as well. And then we would need to look at the food industry, like what do actually we do, right, with production of the food and the quality of food that we actually get access to, and how much you can pay for a healthy bowl of salad versus a fast food, right, that is available maybe on the street. So I think it really that this is a huge ecosystem problem with the quality of food we produce. What do we put over there? Um, what is the access to that to those healthy choices? But there's also like all other aspects which, yeah, of course, they will be up to every individual with regards to healthy lifestyle, sleep, sport, like really taking care of yourself fully. And I think the only solution that I see right now is that is supported is like you need to own it. It's like it's in your hands to actually take care of your own health. And yeah, if you look at the composition of all of the industries behind and that what we are exposed to, yes, everybody actually has a business case behind, maybe not keeping us healthy unnecessarily. So
Yeah,
yeah.
let's go to a bit towards the solution
Mhm,
part of it.
mhm,
Um, so most decisions around funding, but also around policy, around education, are still taken by men.
mhm,
Um, so you and I met at an event from Embrace Health.
Mm-hmm.
And we were at the same table where the question was, why should men care?
Mm-hmm.
So why should men care about this? What is the business case for a good solution and a working system?
I think there are two aspects to it. The way I actually see it, one is indeed very structural, and I think it's a massive economic liability for everyone. And I
Mhm.
think neglecting women's specific health transitions like menopause or menstruations, I think they result in significant attrition in senior talent and actually women in the workspace as well. Because it's all intertwined. There are consequences to this as well. And basically, we want to keep everybody active. Like, if we have healthy adults, they are capable of working as well and contributing, right? Uh, to the economic benefit of the entire society and the country in the end. So, we want to keep basically people healthy. And if we don't have them, or we ignore maybe 50% of our employees and their needs, yeah, then I think it's a huge neglect. So I think there's a lot of potential as well, and then you can actually see a lot of United Nations reports as well on the potential, um, how much money actually is trapped into like women that are kept outside of the working environment. And this is actually where I indeed started being active in that space. So I really see like it's all interconnected, and I think men should care in the end to make sure that we have women healthy and we keep them healthy as much as possible. The other point is that, you know, our private interest and making sure that our partners are healthy and, you know, mothers, sisters, people that we surround ourselves with, our friends. That's another like completely different perspective, but why not? I think we should really care about them as well. I think there was a funny example, dear Kian, when we were sitting at that table. Indeed, I think you know, we just discussed like, well, um, if a woman is happy and wakes up refreshed and energized, yeah, everybody benefits. Everybody that actually surrounds that woman with the partner and then kids, yeah, everybody somehow feel like that positive
Yeah.
energy. And yeah, if a woman is like feeling down and then not feeling great, yeah, then everybody senses it as well. And we can argue, is this really the case? But yeah, just I think I would encourage everybody like to really look at your own environment, and isn't really that the case? Because I
Yeah.
think it's indeed the case in a lot of situations. And I think yeah, we sometimes say happy wife, happy life. Well, we can say happy woman, happy life in the end.
Yeah.
Yeah. For all, because I think everybody benefits from that. So I think that it's a really important aspect for everybody from the economic perspective, but actually the, you know, overall satisfaction perspective.
Yeah. Also quality of life and happiness.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if we don't optimize for that yet, because we forget that prevention is often the key to getting better results, what do we need to change in terms of system, in terms of capital, in terms of education, in terms of legislation to make that shift towards a happy wife, happy life,
Mhm.
or a happy woman, happy life society?
Well, I think it's all intertwined. So we can start maybe from the capital. And I think we need to maybe move from like a social cause or special niche capital to really hard return on investment business
Mhm.
cases. Um, and I actually got also examples from entrepreneurs that I interviewed, and they actually mentioned themselves, like in the moment they changed the pitch to make it more generic and really look at the hardcore data. Yeah, then it totally changed the response from investors. Um,
Is that
and
something that female founders need to change? So really also look at and present this not from a, let's say, maybe less from an emotional point of view and more from like, hey, this is just good business.
I I think so as well. So as to any, and I've been in the corporate industry environment for more than 20 years. Yes, like if we need to pitch any kind of business idea or ask for resources, right? We need to have a good business case and we need to like learn how to make it and how to do it successfully. So I think that comes to preparation as well.
Mhm.
So it's that education preparation. That's what actually is also that underlying factor. How to create a great pitch, how to get interest, how to make that interesting hook for investors and be more effective, right? In the end. And I think if you really have a great case where you are really very specific on your numbers. If you can prove the solution and how it works, definitely can scale up. There's one a little tweak to this as well,
Mhm.
and it comes back. That's why I say that it's all intertwined because it comes back to that gender bias. Because if you look also at the way that sometimes investors ask questions to the founders,
Mhm.
very often male founders will get questions about opportunity, like how you would like to scale up this solution to get, I don't know, 100 million results or
Mhm.
scale it up to 100,000 of users.
Mhm.
And women very often are asked the risk prevention questions like, oh, how can you prevent that we don't lose money on your solution? So this is also somehow encrypted in like the bias and in investors as well, which would be very interesting if you have a VC, for example, to put maybe a person that can be like a fly on the wall, just observe what happens, and maybe has those glasses of um, diversity and make sure that, oh, actually everybody can be asked same questions, because I think it will be really fair if you want to compare exactly those solutions. Yeah, then maybe there needs to be that specific structure and make sure that everybody has the same equal chances to pitch and address same questions. That would be a very fair approach. Well, we don't have those people today very often in VC environments. So what women founders can do is try to pivot and be aware that, oh, it can come. So how can you address the question but pivot to what you really want to answer? And it's a skill set. It's really
Yeah.
something you can learn.
Yeah, that for sure. Plus, I think that AI can do a lot here.
Absolutely.
Actually, we'll talk about the app a bit later on. But how I got to the idea for the app that I'm building was actually
Mhm,
through a conversation I had with Magali Alhash from Muse. And she told me that she was creating a tool where you could feed in the transcript of a call or a meeting that you had in a business environment, and
mhm.
it would give you coaching. I think, especially now, I think that's already in use in or starting to be used in most academic hospitals anyway. That there's a sort of ambient tool that is listening in on the conversation. And initially, the goal is, of course, to translate that into clinical notes. But later, this same type of technology can also be used in a VC environment where it just coaches you, like, hey, you're talking to a female founder, maybe uh, turn the question around because you just
Mhm.
asked something really proving that you're proving your bias. So maybe explore the other part of it because this is what you're missing.
I think that's such an interesting solution that could be applied across so many different environments. I think, Dirk Jan, it can be used in a very similar situations with regards to uh, talent acquisition in companies, promotion, because this really addresses the bias. If I hear you now exactly, yes, it could be definitely used to coach on the spot and catch it as well, because very often you have individuals by themselves without that third eyes actually, and third pair of ears, right, like listening to you and gently navigating you as well to ask appropriate questions. Indeed, I think that would be maybe that's a business idea as well, to have
Mhm.
indeed that kind of coaching that could be more generic and to really address that bias, which we all carry, by the way. We all are biased, but I think we indeed normalize that bias in many occasions. Yes.
Yeah, it's normal to have the bias,
Mm.
but I think it's important, and that applies outside VC as well, to be aware of it.
Yes.
Because if you're
Absolutely.
aware of it, you can ask better questions, and I think potentially also not go away leaving money on the table.
Hmm. Yes. Absolutely.
And then here, like 5 years down, that your wife invested in this startup, and then all of a sudden she says, "Well, see ya."
Indeed.
Yeah. Hey,
But actually, that's what you just mentioned is also very interesting, because some people argue that we should have more women investors. Actually, if you look at also the way it all evolves,
mhm,
women own more and more capital.
yeah,
Over the last 20 years, women really are sitting on like almost 40% of world money, and it can actually increase so much. So we can expect that, yes, there will be in the future, but they are not today yet. Yeah, there will be more and more potentially women investors that need to also be educated how to invest your money. And one of the solution, of course, could be, yes, maybe I can become an investor in startups or in femtech. But there's no guarantee that those women investors will actually put the money here as well, because they also have their own biases. So it's instead of indeed waiting for this to happen, I think it's we need to really navigate to our best potential today. And yes, it can grow, but make sure that when we come and we pitch and we look for funding, we do it in the best possible way, and we are best prepared and we don't give up. Um, so I think that, because I think otherwise it will take another decade, maybe more, that we
yeah,
need to wait for it. But time is now, right? And we also saw like that 1 trillion opportunity is now. When we start investing now, yes, in those 10 years, we can actually realize this potential. But we cannot wait another 10 years to start. It needs to get traction as soon as possible.
absolutely. One more thing before we
Mhm,
dive into the more practical tips for founders.
mhm,
Both communication, and that's the also one of the parts that you highlight. One of
mhm.
a lot of the communication around women's health is still directed at women,
Yes.
but the funding decisions are taken by men. The policy decisions are taken by men. How can we change the communication in such a way that decision makers start to act instead of, or in terms of not telling people what to do anymore, but also doing things themselves? And all, by extension of that, how we change communication to include more men so they actually feel part of the, yeah, also part of the problem owner.
I would say this is indeed about including male allyship. And so basically, maybe let me pivot a little bit from this question, but I think beyond just bringing the men like to the table, I think there is great allyships examples that we can maybe refer to, and one of them is Luke Morris in Australia. He's the co-founder of Women's Mental Health Australia, uh, and after seeing that, like, while men's health was initially like being discussed, women's unique biological and social challenges, they were completely left out of the conversation.
Hmm?
And he was actually the one that he positioned himself in a specific way, and he states that his role is about listening, learning, and standing alongside women as part of the solution. And he built actually the biggest women's mental health organization in Australia. So instead of speaking for women, like he's like, yes, I'm actually part of that as well. But I stand next alongside women in this problem. And I think he also puts it like women's mental health is not just a women's issue. And I think this is exactly indeed what mirrors my research finding, that we need to create like champions of
Uh-huh.
change among women, among men, to draw others as well, draw them into the ecosystem. Um, yes, so I think because that involvement and that engagement, that representation matters a lot. And indeed, it shouldn't be women for women only. Because if we actually continue on this, that it's women for women only, then it will be still treated as niche or something that we don't actually understand. And there are those examples actually around the globe that we can maybe learn from, we can promote. I think not knowing that it's out there, that's can be part of the problem. So I think we should really show those examples more and more,
Mm-hmm.
and make sure that this is really in this way we can change the environment. And luckily, if you look at regulations in specific countries, like Netherlands is a great example, because there is a specific law now dedicated to women's health strategy. In the UK, actually, there was, I think, 2 weeks ago, there was a new women's health strategy also published. And then you see, like, what are the different kind of promises
Mm-hmm.
behind that strategy, what countries try to achieve. And it's also dedicates specific funding for research and solutions and innovation in women's health. Well, the scale of that funding, maybe it's debatable. If you look at UK, I think it's 1.5 million of British pounds that is would be dedicated to
Uh-huh.
women's health. Well, um, I saw a really nice quote by one lady saying, "Well, that's actually a London's apartment that we get for women's health." Which was, I think, a funny reference, but at least it's further ahead than anywhere else, and it can grow. I think it's really, we are in that transition and we cannot expect immediate switch everywhere. But I think we are getting there, and just promoting the results and the outcomes would actually inspire maybe other countries and legislation to create better legislation also in this space in other areas. And I think we can indeed learn from each other, from Asia and Singapore, that also FemTech is growing so much, and bring those solutions, talk about them. I think also like your role to play, to have this podcast, I think
Mm-hmm.
that makes such a huge impact, to make sure that we bring those voices, and having you also behind being the promoter of femtech and creating that platform, that we can openly talk about this. It's also part of bringing awareness in the market. So really everybody can play a role. If we look at this, it's not like a niche, but yes, it's a health issue, and we
Yeah.
need to make sure that we address this.
So, what is the role of data? Because I spoke to Ida Tin a while ago, and she said, well, there's a huge lack of hormonal data. At the
Hmm.
same time, what
Yes.
I see and hear happening, and what she also sees and hears happening, is no, you should protect your data. And obviously, that's not helped by the recent hacks that we've experienced here in the Netherlands. So, you better keep your data safe and don't contribute data. How do you look at that?
I I think it's also a really interesting domain where it is about education,
Hmm?
legislation, because it's about privacy protection, but
Hmm?
also very individual and cultural aspects mixed in this space. Yes, indeed. Like some people will have like that very individual blockage from sharing data. It's like, I don't want anyone to know what's happening to me. And actually, interestingly, it doesn't have to be women specific. because in some cases, if it relates to our health, it's very intimate. And I think that's a mix of personal shame and maybe the systemic dismissal in the space of those health issues. But let's maybe do a little thought experiment. If we build an app for men to track incontinence following prostate cancer surgery, where they had to record every time they leaked, they have to record the data. Would they actually share the data openly? And probably not initially. Maybe I will do this, but would I not have a problem from sharing, about sharing this data? Because it's a massive taboo, right? Also for men. So maybe having space where the data can be anonymized and there will be like that privacy layer that, yes, it's necessary. Because the more data we have, the more we can improve the solution. And the more information we will have about like either clinical trials or the solutions, side effects, so we can improve over time. That's all necessary in the end, not only for me, but actually for all the patients, other people that are involved. But also in the end, of course, it's about us getting better treatments, getting the most of the solutions, right, that we can use, especially with AI right now. Like if we have this available, yeah, that would be great. But this is indeed this challenge, how much it can be personalized and how much it needs to be anonymized. Because I think for us, like to really scale up, we would like to have as much data as possible. But then it would be best if it's anonymous. On the other side, if I want to have like my personal advice, I would like this to be only for me, right? Based on my symptoms or my improvements over time, I want to have my personal advice or a solution. But I think data is very important. And if we don't know about this, I think I mentioned that already earlier on, that some solutions need at least 5 years of records of clinical studies and clinical data before they can get approved, for example, for reimbursement. Like without enough data behind, yeah, we can't even get it. So there's this, I said that the FemTech is really full of paradoxes. But I think structurally we can really unbox them all and address them all structurally. And data is a really huge element in this space.
Absolutely. So there's a couple of things that are still left.
Yes.
I was wondering, in terms of founders, going back to pitches, we talked about what founders can change is a mention the numbers and then also make sure you have a good story and really structure it also as a story, the pitch. So get to the let's say the juicy part, tease that out early on. Um, how can investors signal to founders that that they take them seriously?
I think that's another great perspective. Um, there's all different kind of ways, of course, because I think if you really sit in the meeting where the investors meet founders, you see a lot of interaction, and then you can read, right, the body language, the tone of voice. If you are treated seriously, it's all of those tiny things that you can actually like send as signals. Like if you lean in forward, yeah, you are more open to receive the message. If you like lean back, yeah, then maybe you are more skeptical. So there are those different non-verbal gestures, right, and information that anyone is actually sending to each other. But if we learn how to actually read this as well, um, and not only the things that is said, but how it's said and how it's addressed with the tone, but also form of questions we get. I think we can really navigate in this as well and just see like, oh, if somebody is more leaned back, well, maybe we can invite them more, yeah, and tackle this as it happens. These are all interpersonal skills that we have. And now if we talk about FemTech, which is very much technology oriented, who are the founders? Very often, because it's technology,
Mm.
the founder might be an engineer that came up with a solution. Like, and we have people that are actually very much obsessed with the product. So might be a challenge. How do we pitch, and what is the type of skill set we bring to the table? Because that requires not only your engineering specific skills, but also communication skills, like engaging the audience and yes, also reading the signals that are in the room, which I think also very often those meetings happen in person where everybody can actually see each other and react to each other real time instead of online. Um, I would tell you a very interesting story. One of my colleagues that I studied with in my executive MBA, she was exploring that domain of an app that can actually match investors and founders. And then with some algorithm, you just make a match. And then you rank your investment interest with the offers. And after interviews with like people from venture capitals, with investors, with founders, what actually happened was, well, people want to see each other because it's also about trust. It's like, can I trust you that you will make the best use of my money, right?
Yeah.
Then that
Yeah.
actually we can indeed scale up. So it's about building that relationship, that rapport, and the interpersonal skills matter so much. So
It's
I
not a
think
matter of a swipe.
no, and sometimes even indeed in the best, really great sometimes ideas can be lost if they are not presented in an appropriate way, and then you lose that connection. I think very often also in a VC environment, it's not only just the founder, but also assessing the team that is behind and what is the engagement and relationships between the entire group, like who owns what and who is decisive, who is influential, what do they bring, to the company to make it trustworthy. And those dynamics are also very important because if you see, well, the team is actually not much experienced, you can still invest, but then you need to realize, oh, maybe they need more mentoring as well. So am I ready to do it, but then maybe be more involved, more engaged, and maybe check in with the team more often along the line instead of just leaving it everything fully to the founder and the team.
Mhm.
It really it's I think it's not just in femtech, it's everywhere actually in terms of VCs. But it's a super interesting dynamic. And I think coming back to your question, no, the investors will definitely be able to say, like, if they don't like something, sometimes they will be very blunt,
Mhm.
sometimes they will not speak up much, and they would be like, okay, I already give it a label that I'm not interested, and they maybe let the founder to finish the pitch, but it might finish without actually much interest. I think they can really give signals opposite as well. Like I think sometimes inquiring more, hearing more questions, hearing more about like what investors actually try to elicit from you can be a benefit. So don't treat it maybe as a bad signal, treat it as a good signal because it means you get involvement, you get engagement. And the paradox to this as well is that I had this interview indeed with one of the founders, and she's like, oh, sometimes I had the feeling like they try to elicit more information from you and steal my idea. So it's like that really interesting balance of how much I'm actually willing to share and how can we break those, the hesitation, right, and build trust. Yeah,
Mhm.
because if we come already with that idea, or somebody will steal my idea and will implement it somewhere else, yeah, then we will not disclose so much. And I think maybe it's a matter of choosing where we go, because then we would like to go to founders that we know we can trust. We will not go somewhere where, well, we know already maybe something's happened in the past. And I think it's indeed building that relationship that matters so much.
Yeah. Is it also about listening and just, let's say, uh, putting away that voice in your head that says, well, no, this is not for me? Because investors are mostly like people who make like snap judgments, like like everyone tries to do, like in the first 3 to 8 seconds, they say
Absolutely.
yes or no. And if
Hmm.
you, let's say, extend that timeline a bit, listen into what a person is really telling. So really, yeah, push out the what I call judgment phase.
Hmm.
Then you can
Absolutely.
actually maybe hear something that you didn't expect and be more open for it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think we can indeed learn so much in that process. I think the fact is that we talked about a little bit also about perseverance, like how many times you can actually go and to different investors and make the same pitch. But the thing is, your pitch is never the same, or it would
Yeah,
be a pity if that's the same, right?
yeah,
Because you learn from every interaction, you learn something, and then you improve, and then you come
yeah,
back to the same people or maybe to new ones, right? But then you improve over time, and those interactions make you stronger and make you more resilient. So don't give up. Like, really, if you have a great business case and a great solution, you will find an investor that would be interested. But come prepared. And maybe it's about going to the ones that, like it's just for the trial. Let me just go and make a pitch, and it will be like a rehearsal for
yeah,
the really big investor. And then you go and you pitch and you learn and you frustrate yourself, but then you come back and then you improve until you are really making it perfect. And then when you really talk to serious investors, yeah, you are prepared because you've been challenged already so much. And if you treat it like a holistic experience, not just individual case. And if you don't get money or it's a case lost, and then I give up, but really treat it as part of the experience. Yeah, ultimately your idea will become better because maybe as you progress, maybe you can actually fine tune your proposal even more, or maybe you can adjust your solution, yeah, to make it even stronger. Because maybe those questions reveal something that you didn't see before, and then also uncovers kind of blind spots that we all carry as well. It's like, oh, maybe I should actually take this feedback, work on that, make it better, and then go again. So yeah, I think that's indeed like back to the founder's characteristics. I think irrespective of whether you are a man or a woman, that would be a great practice. Yes.
practicing does help. And indeed, I've heard before also the tip to do your first few pitches with people who you don't want to invest, because then you'll
Hmm.
hear everything there is to know what is wrong about your product, and then you need to be picky about what of that you use. But at least A, you get used a bit to the rejection part, and B, more importantly, I think you learn a lot about indeed what you can improve. And
Yes.
sometimes that's in the pitch, sometimes that's in the structure of the pitch deck, sometimes that's in your hook, that sometimes it's uh you'll find out, hey, this was just a complete waste of time. And
Yes.
that happens. I
So
mean,
I actually talked to some women in this environment, and they actually laughed that it's actually like dating. Like you need to have this trust and chemistry from both sides, and sometimes it will just fail. Like as you said, well, maybe it was just a lost hour or so. Well, but
yeah,
whatever, we will move on, and
yeah,
then yeah, until you really find the best match. And yeah, I think but indeed that's something that we can use technology for to help us prepare to be better. Like you mentioned, AI can help to make the pitch stronger. Like with all of the technologies we have available right now, it's definitely making it easier. But it will not replace the direct human interaction. And I think this is why what we need definitely in this space. And of course, you have Kickstarters as well. You have all different kind of solutions where you can like have a crowdfunding. Like then, also everybody can get there. But yeah, that's also teaching different skills. Like if you want to have this, you need to learn also how the crowdfunding works. But indeed, if you would like to scale up so much, then it's great to don't ignore the interpersonal skills that we need to invest in as well.
If someone wants to start building in FemTech today, um, and wants to leave a trail, how can they do that? How can they put that in practice?
I think we the best way is to have breakthroughs. And if you want to leave a trail, my advice maybe is provocative, but I would say stop trying to fit in the reality that we have and build the one that we deserve. So be courageous, be bold in your ideas, and I would say that living a trail in FemTech specifically today means being unapologetically scientific and economically aggressive. So we need to make sure that the industry doesn't really perceive women health issues as wellness or niche, but it's indeed like a core healthcare problem, and that needs to be substantiated with core data and numbers. So I think this is when I think with that boldness, um, I think we can definitely get there. So that would be my advice, because I think sometimes we are trying in really to keep it small still. There can be really brilliant ideas, but since I'm actually more and more active in the femtech space, you can see sometimes same idea in Germany, same idea in the UK, and maybe France, and then you have different teams, but actually they all work on the same solution, and they are very similar one to another. But then it means, yes, it's limited to a specific market. For some reasons, it can be justifiable, but then, of course, you cannot scale beyond borders. I think if you look at the Netherlands, it's a small market still compared to other markets where you have like bigger populations, like in multiple countries. So that's why I think, yeah, if you really want to leave a trail, yeah, we need to think bold and think beyond borders. That can really be addressing the problem for women overall, and that can be indeed embraced by multiple legislations recipients, it's patients or clients. So, but I think that's how we can leave the trail.
Thank you. That sounds like a great place to move to my last question. So I am
Yes.
developing. I wouldn't call it bold, but anyway, I am developing a funding coach to connect female founders with investors.
Hmm.
Question I always ask is, from your perspective, what is essential to include in that tool to make sure we do advance women's health, uh, but don't replicate the bias that comes with it still. So how can my tool be built in such a way that it doesn't keep femtech in the niche that it is right now?
First of all, congratulations on the idea. I think that's brilliant. And I think that's, I would actually love to see it myself when it's already at least some kind of prototype when
Yeah.
you have that ready, to maybe also give you some feedback. But indeed, AI is a mirror, right? It's not a miracle, it's a mirror um, which is fed by a lot of data that we already have available. In generative AI, like there's so much data already available, but there's still bias. Um, and it's so interesting. Um, we talked about censorship, right? And we talked about the biases. There's also biases in visual biases in the tools. If you just, for example, type pregnant woman,
Mhm.
and very often you will get a picture of just a belly. without a head. So it's like we are just, women, but we are just vessels. Like
Yeah.
we are not for personas, right? And we are not just a person. It's very interesting. So this is just a simple example, but AI has its own bias,
Yeah.
and I think it's good to program it in such a way to counter that bias and counter itself. I
Yeah.
would say, like, really be a devil's advocate in itself, in the way it's actually coded or programmed, to really do those checks as well, as it gives some advice to make sure that it doesn't repeat the same, or pushes women actually, right? And instead of helping them, maybe hurting them and putting them in that corner, but actually helps them. And I think we discussed great examples already with making sure that the pitch is adjusted to the questions that come from the investors. Um, that you really put like appropriate glasses on when you pitch,
Hmm.
and then you focus on business results. And I think that's really applying specific ways. If you say, well, actually, this is the pitch that you make, and then for whom, and you can specify who that is,
Hmm.
then you will get really customized um, responses, and then you
Hmm.
can actually go differently prepared depending on who you talk to. I think it's so important to do the due diligence before you even go to the pitching, and then you connect with an investor to do due diligence and find out more about
Yeah.
that individual, like what actually drives this person, what are the previous ventures maybe where they invested in. Yeah, and then in the conversation, as you get to know them, you can really test their interest. I think all of that, if it's kind of real life, they could be included. Yeah, like how to navigate the pitch to connect and find those connections. Because sometimes that's why I really like your idea. We might miss it out. It can be indeed our blind spot, which maybe such a solution can help.
Yeah.
So great.
Sometimes the solution is so obvious to you that you can't imagine that someone doesn't see it.
Exactly. Absolutely. So I think that would be a great solution. I wish you all the best with driving it forward.
Yeah. Well, the solution is live. So fundingcoach.ai. So you can just go on after we finished recording or after you finished listening, if you're a listener to this podcast. Um, Beata Wandachowicz,
Yes.
where can people learn more about you? And where can they find the study that you've done?
So first of all, it would be great if you can follow me on LinkedIn. You can find me with Beata Wandachowicz-Krason. You can look me up on LinkedIn. This is my very professional profile. And then I also inserted at least executive summary of the research over there.
Hmm.
But there's also a website where you can find me. It's impactshipedge.com. And then you can go there and you can also download different documents, but also connect with me. I would be really happy to stay in touch and especially explore this space even more with people that are active in this industry. And thank you so much, dear Kian, for inviting me here today. It was a pleasure talking to you.
The pleasure was absolutely mutual. Thank you very much for an amazing conversation. Really enjoyed this. Really long also. So Beata Wandachowicz, thank you very much for being my guest today. Listeners, thank you very much for listening. And until the next episode, as always, keep being awesome. Well, that's it. Thank you for listening to episode 155 of Women Disrupting Tech, titled How Female Founders Can Pitch FemTech to Investors with Beata Wandachowicz-Krason. Beata and I hope you found our conversation as insightful and practical as we intended it to be. And if you have any questions for Beata, please leave them in the comment section on Spotify, YouTube, and or Apple Podcasts. I do read all the comments and I'll make sure you get an answer. If you want to connect with Beata or learn more about her research into the funding gap in FemTech, please check out the links in the show notes. As usual, you can find the show notes at womendisruptingtech.blog and on my Substack via the links in the caption. When you found this episode useful, I'd love for you to take a moment to rate and review the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts or YouTube. And if you don't follow us yet, hit the follow or subscribe button so you never miss a future episode. Once again, thank you for listening. I hope to see you in the next episode, and until then, as always, keep being awesome.